On this, we're going to go over the Kyle Rittenhouse case of the murder of a protester in Kenosha. Now, we're only going to go over what we know of as facts. We're not going to go over any of these speculations on what we've seen one side or the other. Now, of what we've seen so far is there have been some speculations and some rumors going around that frankly we can't even verify at this point. Now, one is trying to is uh, one point was trying to state that the victim was on the sex offenders list. Frankly, is there are multiple levels. Number one, there are multiple levels on sexual offenders lists. Number two is we need to understand that this does not matter because we should not be having a system of basically hunting people based on their pasts of what they've done or even what is currently out there. We should not be hunting people down. And we know that Kyle Rittenhouse would not have known this at all, as well as a third point right there. So these points are would be completely blown out of the water right there. These are merely points that are actually being brought up by merely defenders who are trying to somehow validate as it was a person who wasn't a good person who died, so it wasn't a big loss. Now, if we take this from being as a pro-life standpoint, which some of these people are supposedly pro-life who are making these standpoints, who are making these arguments anyway, we know that they're first of all that they're not even that they're fake pro-life people, and this is because they're basically arguing pro-death as a standpoint. We know that this would be a false argument of what ended up happening. Now, what they're trying to argue is that somehow is that this protester attacked him. Now, from what we actually have of legitimate news reports, we do not have any legitimate things of that actually show that he was actually attacked until after he actually killed someone. Now, we do have that point, which actually disputes his point of self-defense. Now, really what we're actually looking at this is there actually a self-defense claim? Now, really, we do not see a self-defense claim here. Now, this is where most people are trying to claim that there's self-defense. Now, a lot of people have gotten the wrong information. Even people, even Daniel McAdams and Ron Paul at the Ron Paul Liberty Report have actually gotten the wrong information. Now, there's many people out there who've gotten the wrong information on this because there's been pretty much a blackout on this as well when it comes down to who you're getting your information from. Most of the information that's coming out so far has either been a limited amount of the cops, and the cops are merely right now have tried to basically use this as a diversion. That's number one. Number two, you've gotten the bulk of the information has come out from the defense attorney, and that means you're not really going to get any legitimate evidence out there so far. But if you're willing to look hard enough, you can find some legitimate evidence of actual coverage of it that actually looks to be pretty non-biased in what's actually happening and not really looking to create a dog in the fight, because essentially we find that this was merely two agitators on both sides of the aisle. And and from one that I found with it was from an actual reporter that's I've actually seen before in our neighborhood asking us, actually asked my family on another topic that happened to be over cell phones in the classroom. And he seems to be an up and up reporter. He actually works for the local NBC affiliate, and he actually filed the report when this actually happened. He was there on site, got video, and the video seems to be fairly clear. and what he ends up describing of what ended up happening was actually pretty clear and concise. Is it was end up being two incidents, not essentially one incident, how many people are describing it as. Many people are describing this as one incident, and this is not the case. This is actually something that happened in two separate incidents. The first incident is where a protester throws a bag at Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse retaliates by firing at the uh, protester. This is one who he ended up killing. Now he then proceeds to call someone on his phone, admitting that he has killed a protester. No one knows who it is, if it's a parent with it, if he was worried with it. There's no report on his emotions of at this time. Now after this ends up happening, this ends up spurning into a event where he ends up having a scuffle with more protesters because of the actual gunshots firing, because he actually killed one of the protesters. Now this is where we find the other event with it. This is the second event in which he has an actual scuffle with the actual other protesters, in which they attacked him afterwards. Now this is a secondary event. Now, what most people are trying to react to is as if these events are switched, as if he was attacked first and then he fired after. Now, the fact is we have evidence that this happened in the order in which he fired after just merely a bag was thrown at him. Now, that's not going to hold up in court, and we know that a bag is not a threat, and there was nothing there to show it as a threat. Now we have that. Now what we have to do is actually look at other pieces of evidence of what will be thrown at him in court. First of all, is what's going to be seen is he's going to be shown as being underage with a firearm. Uh, Basically meaning unlawful with a firearm because he's not 18 or older. Being that he's 17, that's going to be a major problem. He's also going to be, though he will be most likely charged as an adult because he was showing a clear and concise mind of what he was doing, and he kind of knew what he was going after, and he showed a clear and concise ability that he knew that he killed someone, knowing clear and concise ability there with it, so he cannot claim that he was what it called not acting in full mind of acting as an adult of what he was doing there, and he knew the consequences of it. Um, and he can't now when it comes down to these self-defense claims, we know that he cannot take a normal self-defense claim because of what ended up happening. Now normally you'd have to show some type of massive threat. Now since the other person was not armed in any such way other than a bag, which was what I believe a plastic bag. When we're talking a plastic bag, there was not like a large plastic bag. He wasn't trying to wrap it around the guy's head. Uh, there was not anywhere near a close confrontation. It was far away. Uh, we know that basically is that he would not be viewed as any type of threat. And what that means is there is no gauge for self-defense, because obviously there is no point for the castle doctrine because he wasn't at his own home. His residence was in Antioch, Illinois. He was not even in his own home state. He works in Kenosha as a lifeguard and moving some graffiti and things like that. This was not in the area in which he was working. Uh, this was basically done after hours, and this was away from as basically engaging as a mercenary against these protesters, and this is something which has been seen, and it's something that we can actually take as a fact. because when we see that who he was and what we see with that, we can see that that was his action all along because he would not have been armed. This was not, he wasn't even lawful to be armed in the first place. And I think we can actually gauge that with his actions. Now, uh, now if he were actually sanctioned by the police with it, he would have been even deputized in some sort of manner to do something with this. Now, I've gotten arguments with people over this, and the fact is if the police were sanctioning it, he would have been deputized. Now, this is a major problem that many people don't realize. This was if he was deputized, he would have been allowed to actually function within that area with that point. Now, because this never happened, this never occurred. He wasn't deputized. This means that he never actually had the allowance to do so. And I'm not arguing on the behalf of what it called of for him or against him. I'm just going on what we know as of right now. Now, when we talk about uh, what is likely to happen in court, how he grades uh, what he would call evil on the individual. And I think this is another important thing. Uh, and where he is acting as a criminologist. And uh, and he does a scale between Michael Stone does a Dr. Michael Stone from Columbia University does a scale between 1 and 22, and I think we can actually look at this and actually look at his case and actually see where he fits, and this should give you an idea of what should actually happen. And I think when we start to look at it, is I think we can actually look and see he would rank around like what would be like a 12, which is considered power hungry psychopaths who kill when they're cornered. And I think essentially he viewed himself as being cornered, and I think that would actually be something in which would fit his mode. Uh, and that would be like an Ervil LeBaron from a fundamentalist Mormon group who are killing so many of his opponents after these people merely because he viewed them as opponents to his viewpoints. And it's something that we're finding that's where it was coming from. They're merely opponents to his viewpoints, and he views them as being very, very troubling to he viewed these Black Lives Matter protesters, which really shouldn't have been there either, but he viewed them as being very, very troubling to what he viewed as his viewpoint, and he viewed himself as being cornered there because he saw multiple ones there, so he felt that he had to engage in violence. And what we're going to probably see is when it comes down to the charges is there's really no sanctioning for a first degree murder there because he did not have a motive. There's no clear motive set for the individual person to be killed. So he viewed these people as a threat to his way of life, and he viewed them as a these protesters a threat to his way of life, just as much as what it calls the protesters in many cases enter into these towns as they view certain people a threat to their way of life with it, which is why we've seen a lot of the escalations in violence, which is why I don't sanction violence on either end. And we saw that he basically opened fire on one of them without them actually engaging into any serious threat. I mean, there was no assault or anything like that happening. There was no type of things happening like that, and that's where we found that happening. That's why we'll probably see a secondary murder on him. and he will probably likely spend at least 30 years of his life in prison. And I don't think it's going to be, we would rank him any higher than that, uh, because I don't think we're talking that it was anything based on rage or going into the level of trying to benefit themselves. And we can clearly see that this was not self defense. Um, it's not like that. He was not just being provocational towards another person, but but regarding to self defense. So it wasn't in cases like that. This was a case where he was essentially the aggressor, and then all of a sudden, then he got jumped after he engaged in an act of violence. And what we end up finding is that's what it is. What we're finding with the lawyers is the lawyers are trying to basically bury him out of the big hole that he's dug. Now, the lawyers right now are trying to essentially create this whole big illusion of what he was doing and trying to make him out to be this guy that just wanted to help out normalize Kenosha, which is not the case with it because Kenosha really did not want either side out there. They did not want the Black Lives Matter agitators, nor do they want these little mercenaries coming out, let me go shoot a protester type of people, and shoot people. And we know, and the truth with it, we just, all we want to do is resolve this issue and move along with our lives. And people are trying to basically take advantage of it. When we see people that are trying to talk normal, Rand Paul, we can see that as an actual positive. But when we look at the case, we can see this is a clear case of another person just basically trying to take advantage of the situation and wanted to go play cop for a day. And he realized that basically that's not his job, and he's going to have to pay the price for it because he essentially just basically shot an innocent victim that did nothing wrong. And he got jumped for basically trying to kill an innocent victim. And those people, I don't agree with the protesters, but uh, they were right in basically jumping him for basically trying to kill an innocent victim. I do not care about a person's past, whether it's because it was corporate welfare. I mean, at that standard, you could basically say the president should be in the chopping block. And the fact is if we're that because those two things right there, eminent domain abuses and corporate welfare, have led to a lot of people's lives being ruined, and yet he's been the biggest recipient of this in the country, if not definitely in the Northeast. And when we're talking about this, is he? At what point do we actually start uh, making mention that this is not? This is the reason why we've had trouble in our country is for those two reasons: eminent domain abuses uh, and corporate welfare are probably two of the biggest problems we have in this country right now that lead to a lot of abuses at a massive level. And when you basically get a lot of fanboys of that, what are you going to get? You're going to get a bunch of people who believe in uh, a lot of into a empirical presidency that's going to abuse the actual people of the United States. I'm not saying that what I call it that Hillary Clinton was any better. She was just as bad. But the fact is this is what you're going to get, and you end up then you get these followers that are right behind it, and they believe that they can abuse the system just as much, and that's where you get people like this that basically think that they can go play mercenary, going into an area that is not theirs, and that they can shoot up the place, thinking what it called I'm just going to go shoot a couple of protesters because I think just because I'm Trump supporter, that I'll get away with it. And that was the mentality what we had here. And now he gets he's GoFundMe thing, so he can get what it called, that he's going for high priced lawyers to get him off of a homicide charge, because they're going to there was if you look at all the data, we can see that was clearly and we can actually see that that's just as bad, and we can see that we don't need any more of this garbage of just horrible acts that are basically on the level of sociopaths, and that we don't need anybody doing these types of actions. These people should not even see the light of day, because this is as horrible, horrible things that should never even occur in a civilized society. If you're in a civilized society, you should not be basically going and gunning down average people, and that's what we're finding happen. And these are basically he he's no different than your average basically spree killer, and it should be considered no different. I consider him much worse than people like than Susan Smith or Rod Farrell. I mean, he's much worse than, or Charles Whitman. These are people much worse than that. And essentially, what he did is he was trying to copy much of what Charles Whitman did, but he was just doing it for basically his own personal gain of wanting to play police officer. And this is what we found. Um, and that's what we were finding, and that's basically what's the deal on it. And we are finding that that's the whole problem. And what should be viewed with this is we should no longer view any of these people that are trying to claim that it was self-defense. What we had was two incidents. First incident was actually homicide. Second incident was that he got jumped. And so when people view it right, is that that once we view this in a right manner, that he will essentially have to deal with the penalty of what he did. And me being uh, uh, for liberty with it, I'm not going to be supporting either side. And uh, that's about it. I just wanted to kind of like clear the air for me to grasp, I think, so they don't get confused with it, because we're seeing like a defense fund for him one side, and other people are trying to say, oh, we need to, oh, they feared him as like some type of like serial killer. I don't think he's fully with that. I think he's an idiot kid who wanted to play police officer. And I think this is what we're dealing with here. And this is something which we need to just kind of clear the air and find out what exactly was going on first before we make an actual judgment. And this is really what we know here so far. And I'm basically going to cut it right here. And thank you all for watching, and see you guys later.